Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Seuss. I'm the Communications Division Director for the Libertarian Party of Illinois. It's nice to see a lot of press in the room today, including some familiar faces, as today our organization submitted petitions for a full slate of candidates to run in November's general election. It's especially nice to see members of the press because your role as the press is integral to the political process to ensure that the process is fair and free from corruption. As an educator of journalists and a member of the Illinois News Broadcasters Association myself, I greatly appreciate the work that you do, and I'm sure several of my colleagues in the room would echo those sentiments. If at any point you'd like individual one-on-one access with any of our candidates here today, or anyone who's not here today from LP Illinois, I'm happy to facilitate that via email at pr@lpillinois.org or by phone at 815-483-4043. You can also continue communicating with campaign teams directly if you've already been in contact with them. Feel free to use the picture of our candidates that was attached to the press release that notified you of this press conference for both print and digital distribution, including social media. But if you'd like action shots of the petitioning earlier today, we did have some people taking pictures of those. I'm happy to facilitate and find whatever that you might need in the future. Names and titles for candidates and everyone else speaking today can be found on the back of the one sheet on the agenda and also on the front with the candidate pictures. We will have prepared statements from two individuals today before we move on to question and answer. But before we get to those, I'd like to just briefly introduce you to our candidates in the room, our statewide candidates in the room, that is. Kash Jackson, directly to my right over here, is running for governor. Kash is a 20-year retired Navy veteran, spent the last year of his life campaigning across the state. He's been in parades, he's been at conferences all over the place. We'll hear from Kash later this morning as he'll make some remarks later on. Kash's running mate right next to him is Sanj Mowat. Sanj is an IT professional in the Chicagoland area. To my left, Claire Ball is once again running for Illinois Comptroller. That name might sound familiar to some of you. Claire ran for Comptroller in the 2016 general election. She's a CPA and the only certified accountant on the ballot running for Comptroller. Mike Lahaney, who's running for Illinois Treasurer, was not able to make it here today. Mike has 19 years of experience in the field of finance. Steve Duttner, right next to Claire, is running for Secretary of State. Steve has been a libertarian activist for years for several LP affiliates across northern Illinois. And finally, Bubba Harsey is the Attorney General on the LP Illinois ticket. Bubba is an attorney who lives in southern Illinois. As you can see, the Libertarian Party of Illinois is not just running anyone on this ticket. Our ticket is a diverse collection of qualified individuals who believe they can win in November. Also with us today is Bennett Morris, chairman of the Libertarian Party of Illinois. Bennett has served as chairman since our 2018 state convention. Although new to his job, he has navigated us through an integral stage of growth as our party is going through currently. We'll be hearing from Bennett in just a moment. Finally, joining us in the room are some of the literally nearly hundreds of volunteers that helped get our candidates on the ballot in November. From our ballot access director, Krista Walker, to volunteers like Jason Spires, Justin Tucker, Brian Lambrick. Some of these volunteers got over 1,000 volunteer signatures just on their own. Our dedicated volunteers do not get enough credit for the amazing work that they do, and I wanted to make sure that they were properly recognized here, and I'm sure some of the other folks in the room will echo those comments later today. At this time, I'd like to welcome Chairman of the Libertarian Party of Illinois, Bennett Morris, to the podium.
Can you, by the way, just say, are you like on the radio or something? You said you're in the Illinois News Broadcasters.
Yes, I'm a journalism educator at Illinois State University, but I'm also the Communications Director for the Libertarian Party of Illinois.
And you live in Bloomington or Normal?
Bloomington, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve. This is a very exciting day for us. Hello, my name is Bennett Morris. As Steve mentioned, I'm the newly elected chair of the Libertarian Party of Illinois. I'd like to thank everyone for being here on this historic day, including our statewide candidates, volunteers, and members of the media and press. I would specifically like to thank Krista Walker, our volunteer ballot access director. She has coordinated the entire ballot access drive, and we would not be standing here today without her and the sacrifices she and her family have made for this party. Just 2 hours ago, our 6 statewide candidates and a group of dedicated volunteers submitted petitions to appear on November's general election ballot. Thanks to the generosity of volunteers and donors, these candidates were able to submit nearly twice as many signatures than the required 25,000. Our nearly 50,000 collected signatures was 10 times the number of signatures needed by the two billionaire gubernatorial candidates. This petition is not just a simple procedural step for ballot access. It is also a referendum on the failed two-party system that allows the Republican and Democratic parties, the two most powerful and dangerous special interest groups in the United States, to harm our state and nation for their own gain. In a nation divided by political tribalism, peace and freedom that the Libertarian Party promotes is a threat to the status quo. We are a threat to their business, and their business is the sale of power and fear. Illinois is notorious for having some of the strictest ballot access laws in the United States. A recent analysis by the nonpartisan nonprofit Fair Vote ranked Illinois ballot access laws 5th worst in the United States, and the worst state in the Midwest by far. Not only are signature requirements for independents and parties without established status incredibly unfair, but the 5% threshold to gain and maintain established party status is the highest threshold in the country. Preventing competitive elections and limiting voter choice are the two things that the two old parties actually do well together. Protecting their donors and their heavily gerrymandered seats have become much more important to them than actually serving constituents or defending our rights. Ballot access restrictions for libertarians are even more restrictive for Illinois General Assembly and U.S. congressional races. Petition thresholds are extremely high and prevent competition in Illinois elections. More than half of the current state senators and state representatives ran unopposed last election cycle. This is a result of gerrymandering and ballot access restrictions for candidates who reject the two old parties' authoritarian platforms. Today is historic because this is likely the last press conference of this nature that we will ever need to schedule. Despite these incredibly unfair laws, crafted by the two old parties specifically to keep other choices, including libertarians, off the ballot, we are in a confident position to surpass the 5% threshold this year and be recognized hereafter as an established party in the state of Illinois. Beginning in the 2010 governor's race, libertarian candidates have gained ground in each of the last 4 general elections. Candidates have come extremely close to the 5% threshold in 2014 and 2016. Down-ticket candidates have also gained ground. The data is trending upward, and if that trend continues in 2018, we will have equal ballot access moving forward. Equal ballot access would completely change politics in Illinois. For our party, instead of pouring all of our volunteer hours and budget into petitioning just to appear on the ballot, we can use those resources to campaign and promote our candidates' messages. I've seen firsthand what equal ballot access can do. I live in Bloomington, and because of the success of previous candidates, the Libertarian Party is recognized as an established party in McLean County. Achieving equal ballot access cut petition requirements for partisan countywide elected positions by 99%. Because of this, there are 9 Libertarian candidates running for office in a single county this November, in addition to the 6 statewide candidates on the ballot. The McLean County LP is running more county board candidates than the Democrats and just as many as the Republicans. In a county that had 13 candidates run unopposed in the last election, there are only 2 candidates running unopposed in McLean County this November. My goal as chair of this party is to make every county, every state legislative district, every congressional district, and every single race in Illinois just like November's general election in McLean County. There are qualified, talented candidates who want to run for office and could help fix the mess our state is in, but reject the authoritarian duopoly in Springfield. There are voters who want to see the libertarian candidates as an option. The fact that we are now poised to make that a statewide reality in Illinois in spite of the unfair, restrictive laws passed by the two old parties, truly makes this day historic. The amount of volunteer signatures collected in the last 3 months is outstanding, and I want to personally thank each and every person who collected just one page or even just one signature for our statewide ticket. We truly needed everyone's help. Students and seniors, single parents and teachers, disabled veterans and first responders, accountants and small business owners all helped the Libertarian Party meet and greatly exceed the minimum number of signatures to give voters a real choice this fall. The Libertarian Party will be on the ballot this November, and this slate of candidates will be the group that achieves permanent ballot access for libertarians across the state of Illinois. The ideals of individual freedom and limited government have never been more popular with Illinois voters. 2017 and 2018 LP state conventions were our largest state conventions ever, and we had contested races for governor and lieutenant governor heading into the convention this year. The Libertarian Party is the only growing party nationwide, and it is only a matter of time before we will be treated as equals to the two old parties in the eyes of both the law and the voters. Thank you again for the members of the media for coming today, and thanks to our wonderful group of candidates. Of course, thank you once again to our wonderful volunteers. Our job is not done. Our work is not over. Today marks the beginning of our journey, but I have full confidence that that journey will end in November with a victory for the Libertarian Party of Illinois. Thank you.
Can you say, was it 47,000 or how many exactly did you turn in?
47,000. Krista, what's the exact number?
690.
690.
And you needed 25, right?
We needed 25,000.
Under current law.
Under the current law, yes. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Bennett. Bennett will take questions along with the candidates at the conclusion of the press conference. It's my pleasure now to introduce the Libertarian candidate for governor, who will be appearing on your ballot, Kash Jackson, and our next governor of Illinois. Kash?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bennett. And thank you to the media and everybody who's here today. My name is Kash Jackson. I'm a 20-year retired Navy veteran. I am the gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party in the state of Illinois. Today is absolutely a historic moment for this party and this state. For entirely too long, our state has fought a partisan fight between Democrats and Republicans. And the result of that is that we have a disenfranchised voting base. We have members of our community who don't feel as though they're being represented. And that's because we have accepted for entirely too long, that we must somehow accept what Republicans and Democrats decide for us. But they're deciding for the majority, yet their parties are the minority in this state. The majority of people in this state are not spoken for. And it's time that they had a voice. It's time that we had representation that fought for every single person's freedoms and liberties, not just a select group of their voting base. Why is it in this day and age that we don't have representation fighting for equality for all people? On the cusp of the Pride weekend and the Pride parades, where they have they were striving and fighting for equality for decades, and they're finally on an uphill climb to equality, and yet here we are in politics still fighting for equality for third parties. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm simply a man who wants to expand personal freedom for all people. We shouldn't have to fight this hard. We should not have to have this many volunteers, this many resources applied just to get onto the ballot. It's nonsense to me that we still accept that as normal in our society. Libertarians, since several decades ago, have fought for equality. We have fought to, for self-determination, that you have the right to choose what you put in your body. That we need criminal justice reform, that you should be able to choose who you marry. The government has no business in these aspects of our lives. And it's time that we realize and that Illinois voters realize there is a better option. There are men and women like these men and women up here who want to be that better option. But you have to believe in yourself and the people and in the system that, you know what, we can get this done. We didn't think the Cubs would ever win a World Series, but guess what? They did. They won the World Series. And in 2018, we're going to win the World Series in politics. Not only are we going to do that, but Illinois voters are poised to send a message, not through just the nation, but the entire world, that no longer will we allow our political seats to be purchased by those that have the pockets or the political influence and connections to purchase the seats that represent our people. You're supposed to be a servant of the people. You are not a servant of a political action committee. You're not a servant of a lobbyist or any special interest group. You're a servant of the people. That's it. And so before the press ever gets to asking me, well, how are you going to compete on fundraising? I'm not going to. Because this seat should not be purchased. It should be earned. It should be earned. This is a job interview. How hard have I worked? I seriously doubt either one of my opponents has slept in the back of a Ford Focus at a state fair for several days to shake people's hands. I've driven thousands and thousands of miles across this state in a Ford F-150 and a Ford Focus, just meeting people, just talking to people, just hearing their stories. Because that's what we need. We need people who are genuine, that are authentic, and really care about solving this state's issues. I don't have all of the answers. I'll never claim to. But I am surrounded by the smartest bunch of men and women and volunteers that this state has to offer. And collectively, we have the answers. And if we don't have it, we're going to come to you, the people, to get the answers. Because you're intelligent, you have something to offer, and we should value the input of every single Illinois voter. It's their influence, it's their opinion that matters. Not what I say, not what they say, but do we represent the people of this state? Do we fight for freedom and strive for liberty every single day and look at ways to roll back archaic laws that do perpetuate inequality, that do target certain groups and result in higher rates of incarceration or discrimination? Let's have an honest conversation about it. It's not an easy one, but we're going to get that done in 2018. I'm a candidate like I don't believe any either one of my opponents has ever dealt with, and that's a good thing. We need diversity in politics. I believe in capitalism. I believe in the free market. I believe in self-determination and you deciding for you and your family what's good for you and your family, while not asking the General Assembly to pass laws that infringe upon your constitutionally God-given rights. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to get everything right the first time. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board, but that's part of being human. It's part of learning, and it's part of being a part of this process to expand liberty and freedom for the state of Illinois. Thank you.
The always courageous and charismatic Kash Jackson. All right, at this point, we'll open up the floor to questions for any of our candidates. Of course, Bennett Morris, the chairman of LP Illinois, would also be included in any questions that you guys might like to ask as well. So.
What's your guys' response to anybody can address this? You guys are just spoilers. There's no way you're gonna even be included in the debates, and this is all just exercise of futility. Why even waste your time?
Because this is America. Because I spent 20 years in a uniform fighting for freedom. I have as much of a right to run for office as any other person. And anybody out there that feels as though they deserve somebody's vote, that's entitlement. You didn't earn it. Every vote that I will get and every vote that they will get is because we earned it. Not because we feel entitled to it as though it should be given to us. Because people believed in us. And that's what our voting base should be about. It shouldn't be that we vote out of fear and not principle. Politics is flipped on its head right now. It's upside down. People are voting out of fear. They're so afraid of because of the fear mongering that we see in politics, that we see painted about candidates. You're not going to see that from the Libertarian Party. I have zero interest in perpetuating lies or half-truths about any one of my opponents, because the focus and the emphasis should be on me and the job I'm going to do.
Mr. Jackson.
And the same with them.
I'm sorry.
But no, we're not spoilers. If you feel as though we spoiled it, I'm sorry, you didn't get out and work hard enough. You should have worked harder.
Can you address the debate aspect of this? Are you going to be fighting to get into debates?
Of course we will. I mean, we collected nearly 50,000 signatures just to get on the ballot. So you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to fight to get into the debates. That's something that Illinois voters deserve to see. It's not about me, and it's not about them. It's about the voters. The voters deserve to have us in the debates. The voters deserve to hear from a third-party candidate. The voters deserve to see that, you know what, there is a better option out there, and we're it.
Mr. Jackson, I read in Morning Pike's column in the Daily Herald that you spent some days in jail in 2017 for not paying child support. Are you up to date on your child support, and what is the situation? I mean, you say, you know, people, if you become the serious candidate you want to be, stuff like that is going to be all over the place.
It's a great question, and I'm not going to get into a great deal of detail, but what I will say is, or ask a question. Why does Illinois set support orders that exceed double national recommendations? We had a case in McHenry County with Tom Doheny, who was paying $20,000 a month in child support and alimony. $20,000. A law-abiding citizen who ended up killing himself in McHenry County Jail after 3 weeks of being incarcerated for contempt. The exact same thing that happened to me. Voters should ask themselves some serious questions, some critical thinking questions. Why would a guy do 20 years in the military, have a top secret clearance, be a reserve sheriff's deputy, and then ignore the law? Why would he do that? Is it willful? Or is it because you can't take 40 and 50% of somebody's income and expect them to live?
How much were they asking for you to pay per month?
At that time, over 40%. It was nearly $3,000 a month.
And are you up to date now?
I am not, no.
How much are you in arrears?
I don't know.
You don't, how come you don't know if they're your 3 kids?
I don't know the exact amount
About what?
because it has climbed several $1,000s.
So why are you here instead of at home, like, making money?
Because the exact same thing that happened to me that caused the man to kill himself should never happen ever again. No Illinois citizen should be kicked out and separated from their children. The exact same thing that happens to the kids on the border, that's been happening to American citizens with child protective services and with our family court system, should be ended today because it is draconian, it is archaic, and it shouldn't happen. Fathers and mothers should not have to fight to be in their children's lives, and the Illinois Bar Association should be ashamed of themselves for opposing 50-50 legislation that would have fathers like myself who want to be in their kids' lives equally and viably involved in their children's lives. That's what should be happening. I'm fighting for my children, and I'm fighting for future generations, and that's why I'm here today.
I hate to, just one more, do you have visitation? Do you see, how often do you see?
Yes, I do. I do see my kids frequently.
Are you for like legalization of what drugs, marijuana?
I'm for
heroin,
legalization of
anything?
cannabis, and we should view and treat other drugs as a health crisis, not as a criminal crisis.
Including heroin or?
Yes, it's a health issue. Opiate addiction is a health issue, and we should address it as such.
Cash, what would you do differently on the budget?
Cut state spending. We really need to address the fact that state spending has outpaced our economic growth by about 25% over the last 10, 15 years.
Well, when we have the pensions eating up so much, 25% of the operating budget, unless you're gonna dramatically cut back on some of the other big ticket items like K-12 education and health care things, there's not much you can cut.
It's going to be incremental. It's absolutely going to be incremental. It's a long-term plan that's going to take a great deal of time to transpire. It will not happen overnight. We didn't get into this situation overnight. We got into it by kicking the can down the road year after year after year. And we're going to have to work to shrink the overall size of government. Over 7,000 units of local government is something that we should work together with all municipalities, townships, and counties to see where can we make cuts? Where can we save taxpayers' money? That's something that the governor should be in the communities working alongside their legislators doing, and not from down here in Springfield.
Sam McCann has generated some interest. He's apparently going to file today under the Conservative Party. How are you different from him? What effect will his campaign have on yours?
He's not going to have any effect on my campaign. Again, my campaign is structured around my work ethic and that of my team. Us being out in the communities and volunteering and working to earn people's votes, getting in front of those voters, we're going to do the work necessary, and we're not going to make excuses on why we either succeed or do not succeed. Our success is directly tied to how much work and effort we put into this campaign, and that's it.
Yeah, but wouldn't you split the none of the above vote?
I don't know.
Well, to build on Greg's question to begin with, the Libertarians' goal is to win the election. Now really, what's the goal?
To win the election. What was your name again? I didn't catch
I'm
it.
Dave Dahl.
Dave, pleasure to meet you. Who are you with, Dave?
With WTAX here in town.
Okay.
So the goal is to win.
The goal is to win. The goal is to be in the governor's seat, and in the comptroller, and in the treasurer, and the attorney general seat. That is the goal.
Bennett, if you could, one of the criticisms about the current political process is the primaries that we have in March are taxpayer funded, but yet they're funded for Republicans and Democrats. As libertarians that you want to, reduce spending, are you looking to get into that taxpayer subsidized private party primary, or are you looking to possibly change the entire process altogether and just make it an open ballot where libertarians, socialists, independents, conservative party, whatever it may be, just opening up the process entirely?
We'd love to be able to make incremental efforts to open up the process. As you mentioned, primaries are just taxpayer-funded membership drives for the two old parties. And what libertarians would like to do is make sure that we are on equal standing at the beginning, just given the same opportunities as these two authoritarian parties have had. We would definitely want to look into how we can change the law to make it an open process and to reduce the burden on taxpayers for those primaries. Absolutely.
And can you talk a bit about, you've got a couple of legal victories here listed. I believe one of them deals with you guys don't have to run a full slate.
Yes.
Talk a bit about that, why that's important, and how were you harmed by actually having to run a full slate in the past?
Yeah, so for those counties specifically that aren't established parties for the Libertarian Party, the problem with that full slate requirement is you need a state's attorney, you need a coroner, you need a circuit clerk, you need an entire team of people that most Republicans and Democrats don't even put together. As I mentioned in McLean County, Republicans and Democrats aren't running a full slate. They've gerrymandered their own districts to discourage them from doing that. So yeah, that's we'd like to. We're very happy that we don't have to run an entire slate, especially with that requirement for the state's attorney. I mean, we might not have someone who would want to run for state's attorney in a small county, especially with the excessive ballot access requirements. They probably need to get 2,000 signatures just to run for state's attorney. So yeah, that is a huge win for us. We also had a victory. Claire Ball actually won a victory over laws that prevented medical marijuana dispensaries from making campaign finance donations, which is a clear violation of the First Amendment. And if Claire, do you want to expand on that?
I can. Basically, it's just what he said. Basically, the way that the laws were written for the when they legalized medical marijuana, they excluded them from the political process. They said you are not allowed to donate in any way to PACs or to political candidates. This law only applied to medical marijuana dispensaries. So there's a cap that that alcohol can that the big pharma companies that the alcohol companies, all of them can donate to some extent. And we said it's not right. You're excluding them from the political process for no other reason than the nature of their industry. And so we took it to court and said, no, you shouldn't do that. And the courts agreed.
Didn't you work for Susanna Mendoza for a while, or were you just on some kind of a committee?
I was invited to be on her committee to her exploratory committee when she was first elected. Yeah.
And your thought, well, why should you replace her now?
Because I'm the only one that's got over 13 years of experience in accounting and finance, because I am the only one running that has a truly independent mindset. I don't care which side of the ticket is causing the problems. I'm going to call them out equally, and I'm going to work with them equally to solve the problems. When you've got Rauner and Mendoza going back and forth against each other, it doesn't help the people of Illinois. You've got good legislation that gets thrown in the trash, that has to be overridden in the General Assembly. I'm speaking about the Debt Transparency Act. Good, solid piece of legislation, but it was put aside because, because political payments for the upgrading of the IT technology were put on hold, right? So the comptroller held up payments for for the upgrading of the IT department, or our IT services. She held up those payments because she didn't see the viability of the project, called it Rauner's pet project. And then several months later, Rauner vetoed the Debt Transparency Act, citing that the IT wasn't in place to be able to implement these changes. So to me, that says that both sides are playing political games and they're not doing what's in the best interest of the people of Illinois.
So are you for spending some hundreds of millions on new computers?
I am for continuing to implement and upgrade our IT because protecting sensitive information is very important. And if you've ever had to work on old technology, you know how cumbersome that can be.
Quick question for Mr. Jackson, just abortion is a big deal in the race.
Yes, sir.
House Bill 40, so I think people might be interested in the libertarian, your particular view on HB 40 and abortion rights in general. What are you for or against?
Abortion should absolutely not be funded by taxpayers. End of story. HB 40 was a travesty and an encroachment upon people's religious beliefs and where their money goes to. And given the opportunity, I would absolutely love to see HB 40 repealed and done away with. I'm a pro-life candidate, and I believe that we should protect the unborn to the best of our ability. With that being said, I think that Republicans and Democrats have done an atrocious job about addressing the issue because they've drawn a line in the sand saying who has the moral high ground on whether it's bodily autonomy or that a fetus is a child. And what they haven't done is focused on the why. They haven't focused on the economic issues that result in a lot of this. They haven't focused a lot on improving the jobs and the economy in those areas where we do have high rates of abortion. That's what we should be doing.
Understood, but should it continue to be legal under the circumstances it is now legal in Illinois?
Correct, right? So I would not change the law as it stands right now, other than repealing HB 40. It should not be funded by taxpayers. I would like to see more private institutions do that and be privately funded. So if it's going to happen, I think that taxpayers could at least swallow the pill of we're not paying for it, and somebody who elects that, they do that.
And any new gun laws or even bump stocks, any ban on anything, or should everything be open to whoever wants to buy a bazooka?
No, it shouldn't be open to anyone who wants to buy a bazooka. We should have common sense gun laws. We should make sure that we're doing adequate background checks, but there's no empirical evidence that illustrates that additional gun laws is going to make us any safer. If they were, I would be all for it. But the facts are that it doesn't. You're more at risk of being stabbed to death or beaten to death with somebody's hands than you are of being killed by an AR-15. So communities like Deerfield, who have ridiculously low crime rates, and they're passing or they're attempting to pass laws like this, they're infringing upon constitutionally protected rights. And that's what I swore to support and defend against. And I'll keep saying it over and over until the American people start hearing this, is that the greatest threat to freedom in this country is not in Afghanistan or in Korea or in China. The greatest threat to our freedom is in the pen in the hand of a legislator. They're the ones who pass legislation that relinquishes our constitutionally protected rights, and that's what we should be attacking.
Mr. Jackson, how did it come to pass where you thought this race for governor needs somebody else? That somebody else is me, Kash Jackson.
Well, it was really about 2 years ago. I began kind of analyzing the upcoming races. I was retiring from the military. I was a political activist to reform family law because of what I went through and continue to go through. And I said, you know what? I want to make a difference. And just being an activist isn't making the difference that I want. I swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when I saw how many families were struggling with the exact same thing that I am, I knew that I needed to step up what I was going to do. And the governor's race was a viable option. I looked at it and I said, you know what? Why not? Why shouldn't I? I did 20 years in the military. I have as much right as any other person to run for that office. And we all know, it's no secret in this room or in this state or in the nation, that we have not been represented the way that we feel that we should be because of partisan politics. Libertarians are very nonpartisan in that we want you to be free as you can possibly be, and her and every other person in this room, and we want whatever money they take in taxes to be spent responsibly. That's it. We're not really completely opposed to taxation, even though we do believe, taxation is theft, right? We do believe that. But on a larger scale, we understand you can't just get rid of taxes. You can't just dump the funding of infrastructure and jobs and where things are structured right now. But that doesn't mean that we can't work to a better future, a more responsible government, and taking less money from you and your family. I mean, you guys are in here, you're doing a job, you're getting paid. At the end of the day, your money should be going primarily to your families and not to the Illinois government.
You mentioned that you wanted to reform family law. Can you get into specifics of that?
Absolutely. I testified in front of the Restorative Justice Committee here recently with Representative LaShawn Ford, who was the chief sponsor of a piece of 50-50 legislation that we're looking to pass that would presume that all parents, moms and dads alike, are presumed to be fit and equal in the eyes of the court. Currently, in a contested custody case, about 90% of the time in Illinois, moms receive full custody. That's an obvious bias. I mean, 90%. But here's what they don't tell you. Here's what the lobbyists don't tell you, right? And this is why they like to try and paint me as a deadbeat father, is because I'm speaking about it. Anytime that they reduce a parent down to a visitor to their children, that justifies the state putting in support orders, child support orders. And in Illinois, grotesquely inflated support orders, because when they force the collection process, they receive federal funding out of your Social Security that you're paying into. They are literally draining millions out of your Social Security, and they're using our children to do it. Title IV D and E funding. If you've never heard of it, just a quick Google search, Title IV D and E of Social Security Act. We want to see 50-50 legislation passed that ensures that moms and dads are treated equally in the eyes of the court. There's no reason you should have to spend your life savings or your children's college tuition fighting to be a parent. The Illinois Bar Association is protecting its members, and they're protecting their industry. It's a cottage industry built on the separation of families and extended litigation, and it causes more pain and suffering for our children and ultimately our communities. This would not, let me be clear, this would not tie the judge's hands in considering the other 17 factors that they use in determining a custody arrangement. Those would still be in place. So if there was proven domestic violence, not allegations, if there was proven domestic violence, if there was proven circumstances that illustrated to the judge, hey, 50-50 is not in the best interest of these children right now, they still have that capability, contrary to what the Illinois Bar Association wants to spend. So that's primarily what we would like to see.
Who did you support in the 2016 presidential election?
I actually wrote my own name on the ballot. I don't know if that was, I wasn't content, like a lot of other people. I wasn't content with what I saw. And I couldn't in good conscience, so I voted on principle. And in principle, I know I would do right by the American people.
And do you have a job outside of being a candidate right now?
I do not.
So how are you surviving?
Off of my military benefits, what I can.
And this may be for Steve or any of the candidates really, but one of the things also I hear criticized a lot about not including third parties is in the run-up to even the primary, you've got like 12 months worth of media coverage where you heard Pritzker, Rauner, Pritzker, and all their Republican and Democrat candidates. How are you guys harmed by not being a part of that process? And here we are, late June, and you're just now being able to file petition signatures.
Steve,
Yeah, how are you guys as a party or any other non-affiliated independent
Sure.
parties?
Well, I can give you a quick answer, and I'll let Bennett kind of talk about this as well, because I'm sure he's chomping at the bit. But the most recent polling that I saw had choice C, which was someone else or I'm not sure yet, beating both Pritzker and Rauner. Now, right now, that polling is unnamed because we had to wait 3 months after the primaries to, put in our 50,000 signatures. So I think if you look at polling right now, a presumed third-party candidate or an independent or what have you is right alongside with the two billionaires. But unfortunately, like you said, right now it's going unnamed. Bennett, if you want to expand on that at all.
Yeah, I'll just expand with a request to the media here that you reject unscientific polls that do not include all candidates on the ballot. It's absurd that we have to go through this all the time, and that's how they keep us out of the debates. They use polls that say Pritzker or Rauner, that's it. What's your choice? And some debate requirements are that you exceed a certain threshold in polling. Well, if the polls don't include you, then you are automatically preventing us from having our message heard by the people of Illinois. So, so yeah, I would respond with that with a request that when you receive polling that excludes candidates that are options on the ballot for every person in Illinois, that you reject them. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Other questions? All right, thank you guys. Again, PR@lpillinois.org if anybody has any needs whatsoever, photos, interview requests, whatever. Our candidates are here. If you want one-on-one access, we built in some time so you can talk to them one-on-one if you'd like to.
Is it possible to get the ages of the candidates?